Hello and welcome to Gardening Australia's 35th year on air. Can you believe it? 35 years. It's so good to be back. How was your summer? I hope it was filled with fun, getting lots of garden projects completed, planting stuff, and of course, finding time to enjoy your own patch of paradise. We have got an absolute cracker of a 2024 season for you with so much to share. There's no time to waste. Let's get started. Here's what's coming up. We meet a photographer taking a closer look at some of our most iconic species. I'm celebrating the landscape, culture and community of Woodfordia, an idyllic slice of the Moreton Bay hinterland.
I'm going to let you in on a trade secret, profiling some of the plants that inspire garden designers.
And I'm at the new home of the New South Wales herbarium, a state-of-the-art building where over 1.4 million plant specimens are protected against fire, flood and insect infestation behind 2,000 tonnes of soil.
Of all the summer treats, berries would have to be the best, whether they're on ice cream, in your muesli, or simply by the handful. Jane's found a beautiful farm on the edge of Melbourne that's absolutely bursting with them.
If you're under the age of 40, you probably think that blueberries are commonplace, surely delicious, but as expected as strawberries or bananas. In reality, however, blueberries weren't planted in Australia until the 1980s. And today, I'm getting some growing tips from someone who was courageous enough to be one of the first to commercially plant these tasty little morsels.
People didn't really know what they were at the end of the 1980s. As they began to fruit, we had to persuade the population that they should try them too.
Sue's organic blueberry farm is in a lovely rural spot on the edge of the suburbs, about an hour east of Melbourne.
There was nothing on the property. There was no grass, there was nothing, there were no trees. So every tree, apart from in the gully, is something that I've planted.
So you haven't always been a farmer. How did you get into growing blueberries?
No, I was a physiotherapist. We lived in suburban Melbourne. Chester, my late husband, bought this place without consulting me because he came up to bid for the neighbour. There were 4 blocks being auctioned. And he came home and said, well, I got John's block and I got one for us too. So that was a bit of a shock. We had no idea, really, what was ahead. I really wondered how we'd cope because I had 4 small children. I remember when we planted the original blueberries in November 1982, we had to walk from the dam up the hill with buckets of water to water the plants in. Now, how stupid can you be?
Well, they had to be watered though, didn't they? So you did it. Why did you choose blueberries to grow?
Chester chose it. I just went along. I don't know why. He had no horticultural knowledge at all. And he went to the ag department and they were pushing blueberries, just like they've pushed alpacas or emu farms or whatever else.
Did you actually like blueberries in those early days?
Oh, I don't think we'd ever tasted a blueberry. But I'm passionate about growing things and happy to go along with it.
You didn't realise all the hard work though, did you?
No, but nothing's easy. Nothing's easy, doesn't matter what you do.
Across the 7 acres, they now have about 2,500 blueberry plants. Sue's husband, Chester, passed away a few years ago, and now her son, Ed, is working alongside her.
Never in a million years did I think I'd be involved in horticulture or farming. I had no skills or experience in that field. I was a policeman and detective for over 20 years. And then a few years ago, I became very unwell with PTSD, and overnight I stopped working and I stopped my career and I had nothing to do. So I just started coming over here, and there was something quite wholesome and therapeutic about growing things and being outdoors, and especially growing your own food.
Well, that's really, and I'm sure it's been very good for your physical and mental health.
Absolutely, yeah. It's really nice to be able to, one, to help my mum out, and 2, to give myself a purpose to be out outdoors and growing things and tending plants. So it's really nice.
After 4 decades of trial, error and some sweet success, Sue has some hard-won wisdom for anyone growing blueberries at home.
If you want to grow blueberries, you should try and get the variety suited to your local area. And I would also suggest that if you can possibly find a local grower and purchase the plant from there, that's a very good idea. Blueberries will flower profusely right from the word go. So one of the things they need to do is in that first year to take the flowers off. I know it's a shocking thing to do.
Shock horror. Oh.
Actually, they're very pretty flowers. And you just run your hand up the flowers and pull them off so that they can really put their effort into growing for that first year in the ground.
People do like to grow things in pots. Are they successful in larger pots?
They are successful. They're a shallow-rooted plant. The pH needs to be acidic. An azalea mix will probably cope with that. They're all the same family.
Blueberries also need regular water, and Sue keeps the plants heavily mulched with deep layers of straw and wood chips.
Being an organic farm, one of the main reasons is to prevent weeds, but it also improves the soil and retains the moisture and lots of good benefits.
To make sure the bushes stay productive and compact, they also need a prune in winter. Blueberries really are a labour of love. Because the individual berries ripen within the cluster at different times, they need to be carefully picked one by one. And when you pick or buy a blueberry, there's no need to wipe or to wash off that white appearance. It's actually a protective coating called bloom, and it helps the fruit last a little bit longer.
Initially, we only had 2 varieties. Now we've got a lot more. People say to me, what do you like best? And I don't really know. But I guess Brigitte is one of the ones that we like most, and that is Brigitte.
Ah, well, look how big and fat they are.
Yeah.
They are delicious.
How do plants know what time of year it is? As gardeners, we take our seasonal cues from the plants around us. For example, when deciduous trees start losing their leaves or when plants come into flower. But how do plants themselves know? Well, studies have shown that the major factor is the change in daylight hours. Pigments in plants' leaves can determine whether days are getting shorter or longer, which then induces the appropriate flowering or dormancy cycle.
What is a really easy green to grow? Well, I reckon that pea shoots are about as fun and delicious as a green vegetable can be. You can grow them almost anywhere, at almost any time of the year, because you're not trying to grow them into a mature plant. You just want them to germinate and then produce those beautiful little shoots, which are completely delicious. There's lots of ways to do it, but really all you need to do is soak the seed in water, sow it out, and they will germinate within days. You'll be eating them within weeks, and you will not regret it.
Are there different types of ladybirds? Yes. Australia has over 200 species of ladybirds, both native and introduced, and there's over 6,000 worldwide. You might think of ladybirds as being red or orange with black spots, but they can be many different colours. Some are all one colour, some are shiny and iridescent, some are striped, and some are even hairy. Then there's ladybird larvae. They look like a different creature altogether, and the colours and shapes of them vary per species too. Most ladybirds are valuable allies in the garden, with different species eating different pests like scale or aphids, and some even eating fungus. There's one species to look out for though, which is the 26 or 28 spotted ladybird. It's identified because it's orange with 28 black spots. This ladybird and its larvae feed on leaves of the Solanaceae plant family, which includes potatoes and eggplants.
I'm at Woodford, in the Moreton Bay hinterland. Each year, the rural community of Woodfordia hosts the internationally renowned Woodford Folk Festival. The festival is the biggest community-driven cultural event in Australia. Bill Horitz is the founder and brains trust behind what's considered by many to be a cultural phenomenon.
We started a folk festival in Maleny in 1987.
In 1994, Bill orchestrated the move from the Maleny Showgrounds to a former dairy farm just outside Woodford, a 240-acre hidden enclave he christened Woodfordia. To actually buy a site, like, that's the first time it's ever happened in the world.
It was denuded of trees. It was described as clapped-out cattle country.
And what was the first thing you did when it came to growing?
We planted that bunya tree in 1994.
Well, what do you reckon? Will we have a bit of a look around?
Love to show you around.
Where are we going?
That way.
Over the past 30 years, the festival and site have grown in tandem, both in size and nature. When did most of these trees get put in?
I'm guessing around 2002.
The now 500-acre parkland is home to over 110,000 trees, with hundreds of species creating habitat for wildlife and a firm commitment to continued environmental restoration. Even got a flame tree there.
Yeah, there's a few of those up there. Fantastic.
So what's this in here?
The butterfly walk. We brought back the Richmond birdwing butterfly, which hadn't been seen here for maybe 70 or 80 years, and we brought it back. And down around that corner, we found a cycad that was 400 years old.
Did you get volunteers to grow trees at home?
Yeah, you see these bunya trees that we've planted. They don't grow if you plant them as seedlings, but you do that with bunya trees, the grass kills them. We got 1,000 seedlings, and then we asked our patrons to adopt one, take it home, grow it in a bigger pot, and bring it back in 2 years' time. And to the shock, they did. This is our sewage treatment plant. That's the bamboo. Look at that. Hasn't that come on?
That's what happens with this water.
We pump it up to the top of the hill into a tank, and we water the bamboo. So then we harvest the bamboo and make things out of it. So it's trying to get that circle going. Since we've done this, the snakes have come back, the birds, there's 2 families of kangaroos live up in here. The wildlife, birds, everything's back. It's alive again. And I'm bringing you to my favourite place on site. If you look through there, you can see all the diversity of all the species. Every tree is different.
The canopy is just so rich, and everything's joined up. And
what I love here is that you look through there now, but if you look out here, oh, that's what the site looked like when we came. It's here you can see the contrast of what we've done. You can really skite about what we've achieved.
Another driving force behind the Woodford Folk Festival is co-founder Amanda Jacks. Who looks after all of this?
We have a small team of site staff. We also have working bees during the year where we have hundreds of people come for a weekend, and we get so much work done over those weekends. So it really is the community comes in and helps look after Woodfordia.
When the festival takes place, the Woodfordia village transforms into the 67th largest town in Australia, with infrastructure accommodating a live-in population of around 17,000 people. Resident Green Thumb Paul Grant has worked here for 13 years.
We've got the native mint there.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Barbecue right there for the lamb. Yeah. Native gardenia here.
Oh, that's always got a good aroma, hasn't it?
It has, doesn't it? Especially at night time, it smells really strong.
Yeah.
We got our timefolias there as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hibiscus,
hibiscus,
lemon myrtle.
Yep.
And the goodenia here, I mean, that is just running rampant.
They go mad, don't they? They're such a good ground cover.
Yeah. Talk about swamp out all the weeds.
All the weeds, and cool it down too.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly, because the mulch still gives off heat, whereas a plant doesn't.
That's right, yeah.
Are you happy with how it's progressed?
I am happy with how it's progressed, yeah. It's been really low maintenance and that. And it's been so dry lately too, so it stood the test of time, so yeah, good stuff.
Out of such an extensive festival, have you got a favourite element?
I do. I love it when the whole festival can celebrate together. The other is our welcome ceremony, which is just a beautiful ceremony.
And leading that welcome ceremony is Uncle Noel Blair, who's one of the custodians appointed by the traditional owners, the Jinnaburra people. What does the festival mean to you to see everyone here on your country?
All I want to say about this place is one thing about it, we can be an example for the rest of the world, where people can come together, live together in peace and harmony for that short period of time, you know. Yeah, but it's been good, eh? I've been privileged to be part of something very special, eh?
One of the standout features of the site is Lake Gula, and we'll explore these stunning wetlands with the designer a little later in the show. You know, trends come and go in fashion, hairstyles, even plants. Tammy wants to help you dig into 2024 in true designer garden style with a few A-list plants.
I'm in Vineyard in Greater Western Sydney, about 50 kilometres from the city centre, and I'm going to profile a few go-to plants that garden designers love. Impact. First up are a few plants that require very little fuss to create an instant and intentional space. They're bold and sculptural and will easily inspire you to create a theme and focal points in your garden that you can build around. Cardboard palms fit the bill perfectly. Their upright textured leaves can grow up to 1.2 metres. They're super hardy and drought tolerant once they're established, which usually takes about 12 weeks. They're great in pots too. These are agaves. This is a twin-flowered agave, or Agave Gemini flora, Agave Americana, and Agave Arizona star. They all originate in Mexico, and they're great focal points in contemporary, dry or rocky gardens. They're plant and go succulents that need very little care in well-draining soil and full sun. Xantharias, or native grass trees, are an Aussie architectural icon. They add a sculptural element to any garden. But they're a little slow growing and they hate wet feet, so you must have well-drained soil. And when you're watering, avoid wetting the trunk, as this can leave them susceptible to pests and diseases. Next up, screening. And clumping bamboo creates instant calming holiday vibes. Clumping cultivars spread outward from the centre rather than lengthways, so plant more than one in a long bed or trough to get the full effect. Select dwarf varieties for lightweight pots, as tall ones can become top-heavy and blow over unless they're weighed down. Leaves will drop regularly, but they're large and easy to pick up, and you can use them in your compost. And while they're great screeners, there are other options to liven up dull views and increase your privacy. But have you considered magnolias? It's perfect for blocking out fences or balcony railings and softening hard materials and edges. It also makes a stunning single feature tree or an excellent hedge. It takes 3 to 4 years for them to produce their big, beautifully scented blooms, and they require deep watering once a week in hot, dry periods. And creeping ficus don't need much space to cover an unsightly wall, and they're a less weedy choice than English ivy. but it will need quarterly pruning to prevent mature foliage forming and to keep it hugging the wall. Colour. Of course, colour is important in any garden, but there's a lot more to choose from than just green. Try some of these for immediate contrast in interest. Hardenbergia, also known as false sarsaparilla and purple coral pea, are hardy evergreen climbers. You can train them over fences or trellises, and they grow well in full sun to part shade. And best of all, they are heavy flowering. There's also a variety called Pure White. The delicate sprays of these flowers bloom from mid-winter through to early spring, above attractive lime green foliage and stems. Succulents are another group of plants you can rely on for instant visual impact. This one here is Echeveria blue curls, but the colours run through the spectrum with succulents, from purples to silvers to cool blues and greens. They're no fuss and a gorgeous addition to any garden. Ordelauropetalum is an old favourite, and for good reason. It has rich burgundy and pink tones year-round, and the dwarf forms create dense, easily pruned coverage. So if you're after instant impact, statement screens, or simply to colour your world, try these Garden Designer go-tos.
Another of the star attractions here at Woodfordia is the Conservation and Recreational Lake. Lake Cundall opened in 2019 and was created by designer Patrick Handley. So, Patrick, how did Lake Cundall come into being?
Over the last few years, they've been doing surveys of the patrons, and they said, what do you want? What's something you really want? And every time it came up, the majority thing was somewhere to swim.
The lake's name refers to the region's traditional owners, the Jinnaburra people, and specifically references spokesperson Uncle Noel Blair, whose Indigenous name is Cundall, which translated means koala. How large is the actual lake itself?
Well, it's 1.25 acres. It's actually 5.5 metres deep out there in the deep zone. And there's a beautiful cod hole down there. We have spangled perch, and we have 3 Mary River cod. Plus we have, which I really love, is 3 lungfish in here as well.
Patrick's design, which was 2 years in the making, has carefully created spaces for humans to access without impacting on the areas crafted for habitat and filtration.
They've had up to 25,000 people in here over the 5 to 6 days of the festival.
That's a serious community sort of pool.
And so you can imagine all the people coming into the beach. So we had to design systems to actually move that water quickly back out into the filtration stream where it could be taken away and filtered. We're really just providing massive habitat for beneficial bacteria, invertebrates, molluscs, to actually filter that water and keep it clean.
And I mean, that's a massive achievement when you think 25,000 people and no chemical.
No chemical at all.
Whatsoever?
None at all. We do test the water here as well. From the laboratory, they said it's better than most drinking water samples that they get.
Wow. And plants are, of course, key.
This is the kidney of the whole system, or one of 2 actually. So this is 250 square metres of aerobic filtration. This is pretty much behaves like a well-turned compost.
I love that the island is getting established.
Yes, we have the grevillea. Put that in just to mask some of that stone and to green it up. It was quite a rocky point. But that's a good example of what you can do with plants to sort of create a bit more of a subtle finish on pond edges as well.
And I see you got lily pillies.
There's lily pillies and lots of callistemons. We have a tree fern.
Yep.
A lot of that was put in just to create that sort of creaky sort of feel on the back there. And this is the woolly frog mouth. That's the philodendron species, which is one of my favourites. And this we often get, it's got the beautiful yellow flower.
Yeah, look at it. And then you got the brahmi just flowering along the edge here.
Yeah, that's self-sown that through there. We put it into the wetlands and little pieces have obviously come here and taken root, and it's a beautiful effect, isn't it?
Whoa, look at that. Stunning.
Are they massive?
Absolutely.
They're one of my favourites again. They're a native species. They're the Nymphea, or the giant water lily. They've mostly been displaced through most of Australia now, just through what's been happening with our waterways.
But it's not just people and plants that Patrick's aiming to please.
Kangaroos are coming in and drinking. Ducks and birds, cormorants obviously have come to have a feed as well. Our frogs and our keelback snakes, which are not dangerous at all. They're a beautiful snake. A few carpet snakes as well.
How does it make you feel?
It sort of almost takes my breath away to see it actually grow into what it's growing into. Such a beautiful, beautiful thing to actually experience and to be in. It's incredible. I'm really proud of it.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Sophie looks at a tough and terrific small tree. Jerry introduces us to some new recruits in his garden. And we meet a photographer taking a closer look at some of our most iconic species. Before we crack on, I've got some really exciting news to share with you. Recently, my friend and yours, Clarence, was recognised for his incredible contribution with the Australian Institute of Horticulture Golden Wattle Award. Well done, mate. Now, let's join him as he heads to Sydney's newest home of horticultural science.
The future of horticultural science looks to be safely protected within this monumental building. It really is built to last. This is the National Herbarium of New South Wales, here at the Australian Botanic Garden, Mount Annan in Sydney. I was here last year taking a look at a newly discovered species of eucalypt. And now I'm back to find out what goes on behind the scenes. Dr. Hannah McPherson is the collections manager. Hi Hannah, how are you going?
Hey, good to see you.
Well, the new National Herbarium of New South Wales.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So what is a herbarium?
Well, it's kind of like a library, but instead of books, we have plant specimens. So most of our collection is dried, pressed plant specimens on an archival sheet of paper, and it's the plant, but also the information that comes along with it that makes it a research resource.
This is a superbly impressive building. I love it.
It's designed on a Waratah seed pod, so this giant fly roof is like the pod protecting the seeds underneath. So these collection vaults here are like the seeds holding the information for future generations. Because they're separate from the rest of the building and from each other, it gives us a perfect opportunity to keep the specimens safe, especially from pests and mould. They're also made of rammed earth and they're about 45 centimetres thick. It's extremely fireproof as well.
It really is such a cool building. I can't wait to look inside. My first stop is of interest to all budding and experienced gardeners out there. So I'm off to see identification botanist Peter Jobson at the Botanical Identification Service. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Clarence, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So this is where members of the public can bring plant samples for identification?
They sure can. We get a whole range of queries from the general public right through to consultants, other government agencies, the police dealing with cannabis and opium poppies, right through to biosecurity.
I'm guessing the team can do a quick site ID here at the counter. Where do you go for deeper investigation?
You're absolutely correct. A lot of the time we can do it straight off, but for the other things, we're going to need a microscope. Why don't I show you how we do it?
That'd be great. You must get some interesting stories with some of the plant identifications you've got to do.
Oh, we certainly do. We never know fully what we're going to get. Like this one in the case, this is a poisoning that came in yesterday.
So a case of poisoning?
Yes, so in this case, a pastoralist reported that their bulls were not very well. The plants that were around near where the animals were, they took samples and have brought them to us, and we will now identify them for them. So I know what it is. Do you like to have a look underneath?
Wow. I'm guessing they're hairs. They don't look like hairs at that magnification. I can see I've got a little resin nodule sitting on the branchlet.
So this is Eremophila maculata, the spotted emu bush. The thing that gives it away is the type of hooked hairs, as well as the clincher is that lovely S-shaped pedicel sticking out from the leaves.
So what's the next step for you?
Oh, look, this is really great. We will write a report now and send that back to the district veterinary officer, who will then be able to do the recovery for the cattle now that they know what the plans are.
Positive ID, positive outcome.
Correct.
Thanks so much, Peter. This has been really enlightening.
It's great to see you, Clarence.
So much more to see, yeah. Thank you.
And then you could just pop that one.
Volunteers are the heartbeat of the herbarium when it comes to archiving specimens. Jude Wright is the volunteer coordinator.
We're conserving herbarium specimens by attaching them to archival materials, so an archival board, archival folder. That means that it's acid-free and that the specimens can be conserved for hundreds of years.
Volunteers are also employed as illustrators to record specimens using both old and new techniques.
It's the illustrator's job to interpret the plant material that we have, but also the taxonomic descriptions, the scientific descriptions of the plants. And it is our role to draw the very small features that often differentiate one species from the other.
So this is the next step in the process?
Yes, I'm now at our drawing tablet where we produce our digital illustrations. This illustration will be published in a journal, a scientific journal. Also, many of the species that we draw will also go on PlantNet, New South Wales Flora Online, which is available for everyone to see.
Yeah, the systematics. The herbarium is home to many research scientists, like Dr. Russell Barrett, who recently stumbled across a new species of Australia's hardest timber, the aptly named ironwood.
So here we are, this is Vault 3.
This is a big change in temperature.
Yeah, nice and chilly in here. This is a really interesting species, in large part because it's one of Australia's most toxic species. And so all parts of the ironwood tree, from the roots through to the seeds, contain a toxin named from this plant known as erythrophylline, and that compound kills almost anything. And so it's there as a mechanism for the plant to stop itself being eaten. And so there are records of some of the earliest pastoralists moving sheep up into North Queensland, the sheep encountering this species for the first time, who lost 10,000 sheep in the space for a week, feeding off the young growth of this ironwood. Ironwood was a species of great interest to me because it was such a common species where I grew up in the northwest Kimberley on a cattle station. And so I thought I knew it very well until I was walking in the Pilbara one day and came across a shrub I didn't actually recognise. I brought that back for further analysis in comparison to specimens held here, and so I had actually discovered a new species of tree in this very well-known and iconic group.
Yeah, and look, interestingly, I've been to quite a few communities where ironwood is used a lot and makes amazing clapsticks. Some of the tools and weapons you make out of this timber is something else.
It's a really incredible history.
It's so amazing to see what goes on behind the scenes, but I guess members of the public aren't really aware of just what an amazing resource is available to them.
Oh, yeah, it is. It really is. It's amazing. And we now have 1.1 million specimen images from our digitisation program, and they're all available to the public online.
Such an incredible building. How has it changed the game for botanical science?
Well, I guess having such a large resource that's open to all plant scientists and to the public, we can ask questions like, have flowering times changed with climate change, or how are plant distributions being affected by landscape changes, and we can better manage and conserve our biodiversity when we can ask these kind of questions.
Look at these beautiful flowers. This is the Persian silk tree, or Albizia julibrisson. It's a beautiful small tree with this really fine foliage, almost looks tropical, yet it's really hardy in my summer dry climate. It has these beautiful soft pink flowers in summer. They even have a soft sweet scent. It's deciduous and perfect for a small space.
Some gardeners really know their stuff. Take Jerry. Decades of learning, experience, focus and observation have built his extensive knowledge. But like all great gardeners, he knows there's always room for new plants.
The key to gardening success is experimentation. I spend my whole life looking for something new to grow or new techniques to help me grow old favourites in different and exciting ways. It fills my life with joy. This one is the Galapagos tomato, Solanum cheesemani, and it's one of my new friends. I first saw these in the Galapagos Islands. It's a small plant that produces tiny little round tomatoes, about the size of your fingernail, and they taste just like regular tomatoes. Fortunately, I was able to track down some seed locally, and from 6 seed, I was able to produce these 2 plants. What grabbed me about this plant is its heat tolerance. After all, the Galapagos Islands are a pretty hot, exposed environment on the equator. Normally, the heat and humidity of a subtropical Brisbane summer means tomatoes get sick, but this little island survivor hasn't shown any signs of slowing down. So I'm keen to save seed. I wash the pulp from the seed, press the seed on some paper toweling, dry it and store the seed in a jar in the fridge to keep it fresh. When it's time to sow, cut some pieces of seed off, press them into a pot and they'll germinate quickly. So you can see the appeal. Plant breeders have recognised these qualities and are using them to breed in heat resistance and also the perfect roundness of the fruit into commercial varieties. Many gardeners grow bat plants. They're popular for their otherworldly and curious flowers. This is a black bat plant. It's a 3-year-old seedling and it hasn't yet flowered, but they grow so well in my garden, I decided to explore other members of the family tree. This is a giant bat plant, Tacca integrifolia. It puts out flowers almost 1 metre in length and has big, broad, glossy leaves. It's native to tropical Asia, and I first saw this flowering in the rainforests of Bangladesh, and that's when I set my heart on having one of my own. These plants grow really well in a frost-free climate along the coast, and I've grown them as far south as Sydney. They do need moisture, they do need shelter, and they must be given shade. Otherwise, they're really easy to grow. And this is my newest addition, Tacca leontopetaloides. While this one is just as pretty, it's also functional, producing starchy root tubers. Now, taccas are members of the yam family, and this species is native to subtropical and tropical Africa and Asia, including northern Australia. Now, apart from being beautiful plants, they're also productive, and they cope with tough times. Think of them as potatoes in a different wrapper. Now, to prepare them, they do need to be sliced very thinly or grated and soaked in water, and that removes the astringent flavour. And then you can either boil them or roast them. The fun for me is finding out which variety I have. There are 2. One has multiple tubers and the other has one big one. And I'm hoping I've got the big ones. More food for me. And this is lemon aspen. It's native to central northern Queensland in the upland rainforests. In fact, you might even find some of the Tacca leontopetaloides growing nearby. This plant is commercially grown now, and I've been looking for these for some time. They're small, white, juicy, and packed with a distinctive, strong, lemony, acidic flavour. 100 grams of lemon aspen fruit comes close to the juice, zest and pulp of about 6 large lemons. In the wild, these will reach 20 metres, but they respond really well to pruning. So if you've got a small city garden, you can maintain these at 3 to 5 metres high and they will fruit really well. Now, these plants are a bit of a labour of love. They're a rescue job, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how they respond and how soon I can get fruit. While its natural range is tropical, lemon aspen should tolerate low temperatures and mild frost, particularly once it's established. But sometimes it's not a new plant that you're after, rather a new technique for an old favourite. I grow 2 species of backscratcher ginger. This one's native to Australia, while the other hails from New Guinea. They're spectacular garden plants with enormous flower cones and are adapted to growing in the understory of rainforests where they can reach up to 3 metres in height. These are really popular with subtropical and tropical gardeners for good reason. And being a ginger, the normal way to propagate them is to lift them up, divide them at the base and then replant. But I found a different way of growing them. Looking at the base of the stems, I noticed small swellings. Even though gingers rarely strike from cuttings, I thought, why not give it a go? So all I do is just make a cut just below the node like that. And then with a fresh pot of potting mix, you press it into the surface until it's firm. Then I put it into an archive box. These are really handy because they let the light in, but most importantly, they cut down cold winter winds, which I find are the biggest problem with growing these plants. Then a little bit of additional shade on top in the form of an old net curtain, and you keep them damp and they will grow really well. And it worked. These cuttings are 2 years old. Sometimes fortune favours the brave. It's easy to get stuck in a rut when you're gardening, but by continually trying new things, by pushing the boundaries in your own patch, you're exposing yourself to a whole new world of potential favourites. So diversify.
I don't know about you, but my soil is full of worms and it's full of life, which means that birds often come in and want to scratch it up. Even my own chickens do it. When they do that, they damage my seedlings, so I'm often having to find a way to cover them up to get them established. Now, there's lots of ways that I cover entire rows, but if you want to do just a little section, I find these really useful. It's just one of those mesh drawers out of a stackable system. I find them on the side of the road all the time. You'll get them at the tip shop, and they're really great. They last outdoors for ages. You can stack them all up together when you don't need them. I reckon keep your eye out for them. You'll always find a use.
Our gardens are not just for us. So many species call them home. Who hasn't had the joy of watching a wild bird visit, even just for a fleeting moment? Our next story follows a photographer who takes observation to the next level.
I think it is a necessity to constantly connect with beauty and with the love of the natural world. It makes us healthy humans. My name is Leela Jeffries. I'm a photographic and video artist, and my focus is working with birds. I've been photographing birds for 15 years, and it started off with this kind of obsession that I had about taking portraiture of birds and showing them at human scale. The first exhibition that I held was on budgerigars, and then I did an exhibition on cockatoos. I wanted to photograph every species of cockatoo that's found in Australia, and then from there I went on to birds of prey. And then I became really interested about sort of pulling the camera back and looking at flocks. And so I started working with flocks of birds, like these are the Gouldian finches. I think Australia's most beautiful finches. And I went from there to also working with couples. And this is Rain and June. They are a Budgerigar couple. They're bonded. You know, they're just so beautiful because they just would not even look at me. They're just always looking into each other's eyes. So they're kind of really fun to work with. I sort of then went on and started working with video art as well. In fact, I have a video artwork that I collaborated on with my friend Melvin called Temple. And the whole concept of that artwork is that nature can be our temple. I've been really fortunate to have all these champions. I got a letter in the mail from Brooke Shields, this actress that just out of the blue wrote to me and said, I love what you do, I want to help you. It's crazy. And I just got contacted by people that saw my work and just loved it. And then from there, the works have just started to be in exhibitions overseas. Good girl. And I'm so proud of it because I think one of my big missions is about really getting the word out about how extraordinary our wildlife is and how beautiful nature is in Australia. So seeing it kind of go to the international stage is like one of the best things ever. It's amazing. I had a pretty free-range childhood. I had a family, parents that were particularly about go out and play in the bush. My mum is actually Indian. My dad was born in the Isle of Man. I was born in Papua New Guinea. My brother was born in Australia, so we were sort of all over the place. And all those places that we lived, my dad would always take us out into nature. You know, our family car was a Kombi. We just drove everywhere. And I always remember if we saw an injured bird on the side of the road, you know, my dad just silently would just pull over, scoop it up, take it home. He'd just want to help rehabilitate birds. And I think that just always sat in the background. And on top of that, I was a bit of a space cadet kid. You know, I wasn't aware of where I was, but I was pinpoint sharp aware of any wildlife or any animal that I came into contact with. I was animal obsessed. Then I grew up and I became a responsible adult and I went to university. I studied photography. I was terrible at it. I just didn't like photographing people at all. And I was living a very city, urban life. And so that's when I started becoming a bit of a backyard bird watcher. So we used to have silver eyes and wrens and all these beautiful little birds. And I started to notice that the planting in the gardens have changed. So we're getting the bigger trees with the grass, and that benefits, you know, some of the more dominant birds, but the smaller birds are struggling a bit. And so I guess there was this connection between realising how important it is to help plant the right sort of small bushy shrubs for the little birds so that you can attract them to your garden. I just started to become, I guess, back to becoming a nature lover again and realising how important it was to have that in my life. And so I feel like the gardeners are like my people, the bird watchers are my people, and I've always noticed that there's just so much just kindness that comes from people that are constantly exposed to nature. Like it just taps into this beautiful part of humanity. And so I hope through my work I can, I guess, remind people and help remind us all to kind of go back to nature and connect with nature. Once I had this deep connection with birds again, I had this just idea. I was actually bird watching on Christmas Island at the time, and I was with my binoculars and I was looking at the birds and I was just thinking, they're so beautiful. Why is it not everybody can see this? And so I had this idea as a personal project to photograph a portrait of a bird. Essentially, like you think of a photographer's studio, I just brought it right down to bird size, and I had like a paper roll and I had a perch, and I kind of made this little room with perspex sides so I could light from the outside. And then I just sat really quietly with my camera and put the bird in. And you can't capture a beautiful portrait unless a bird is really comfortable. You know, they have to be happy. I've noticed that the energy of a room has to be calm, it has to be quiet, and it gets yourself to a point where once you connect, then actually the energy can change. It can be really rowdy and loud and fun. Often I've finished taking their portrait and they won't leave, like they're just loving the attention. So they really can interact with you. It's quite a beautiful experience. I suppose I didn't even consciously realise it, but I was starting to show their expression and show their character, and it's always been there. I've always seen it, and I think it was about making sure that I capture portraits that enabled other people to see it as well. The way I get access to the birds is through wildlife rescue centres. It's through zoos that have a huge focus on conservation and wildlife, all these different wildlife places. It's amazing when you start to connect into that network, you'll see that there is all these beautiful people that care about wildlife, and I get to work with them.
I got them all.
I love working with brolgas. This brolga that I worked with, she was rescued from young, and she's such a big bird, I needed a big set. And she was just like one of the people on set. She loved dancing, like brolgas are known for their dance. And so what started out as a quiet set turned into, like, she loves loud music and she loves everybody being excited and jumping and playfulness. That was what it was like working with her. So it's a good example of how different their personalities can be. So my most recent exhibition was called The Wound is the Place Where the Light Enters, and it came from the bushfires that hit in 2020 and the grief that I felt, and I think we all felt. The concept behind The Wound is the Place Where the Light Enters is that it's often when we go through our most difficult times that we grow and evolve the most. It's when we learn the most. So I photographed birds that had natural colourings and markings of red in them to sort of show their wounds. But the idea is that they're showing their wounds with almost like pride and to show that this is how I evolve and grow through my knocks, you know, through the difficult times. So the whole exhibition was kind of around that concept. So the work that I do is all about making people connect with their hearts to the artwork and therefore connecting with nature.
There is nothing better than working with a few extra hands over the summer because there's always stuff to do. Now, have you missed your homework over the break? Well, the party and the summer are over. Here's your list of jobs for the weekend. In cool temperate gardens, humid conditions see our tasty tomatoes suffer fungal foliage attacks. To fight it, remove lower leaves to increase airflow and irrigate at ground level. Apples and pears have stopped growing and are starting to harden off, so it's time for a summer prune. Remove suckers, dead and diseased wood and shorten lanky branches back to healthy buds. It's a great time to start thinking about winter crops. Sowing seeds of winter cabbage, Brussels sprouts and cauliflower into punnets now will give you a head start when the weather cools. Warm temperate gardeners sharpen those secateurs. It's rose pruning time. A light haircut, removing spent flowers and cutting blooms for vases encourages a flush of autumn flowers. If your toms are suffering from black, soggy, sunken areas at the base of fruit, you've got blossom end rot. Caused by a lack of calcium, consistent watering is the key to stopping the rot. Have a scratch in the soil. Is it damp below the surface or is water beading and running off? If your soils are repelling water, give them a good fork and add some compost or organic soil wetter. In subtropical gardens, yellowing older leaves on Banksias, Grevilleas, rhododendrons, gardenias and citrus is a sign of iron deficiency, so treat them to a dose of iron chelates at recommended rates. Get your orders in for certified virus-free strawberry runners now, in time to get them into the ground next month. Varieties like Joy, Loana and Red Gauntlet are sweet as in this climate. As flowering finishes, give mock orange Morea paniculata a good prune. This not only shapes your shrub, it also prevents them setting seed that can then spread into the bush by birds. Tropical gardeners grab the spade and get splitting. Clumps of garlic and onion chives can be dug up and divided now. Tough and tasty, they make great borders and gap fillers in the garden. Looking for a mint that loves heat and humidity? Try Egyptian mint. With a Pharaoh-friendly apple mint flavour, it's perfect in sweets, savouries or in a cooling summer cordial. Use heavy falls of rain to identify drainage issues in your patch. Concentrate on improving areas where water pools and direct excessive flows to thirsty beds using swales and banks. In arid zones, plant out another round of terrific tomatoes. Best to go in now are cherry toms. They're quick growing, more disease resistant and can crop into May or even early June. Harvested a huge haul of herbs? Well, get drying. Hang herbs like rosemary, sage, thyme and bay leaves in an airy, well-ventilated spot away from direct light to dry and then store for later use. Rub, Chinese, Romanesco or good old sprouting. Whichever broccoli you love, get them in the ground now to ensure they mature over the cooler months. Blood and bone will kick them along. Enjoy the summer sun and make sure you take care of yourself while you take care of your garden. If it's too hot in the plot, head over to our YouTube page for some cool clips and content. Well, I can't believe it's over so soon. But only for this week. I'm here with my Woodfordia gardening team and they're helping me plant a tree. We're going to crack on with this. I hope you have a great time with your gardening team. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
See ya.
I'm visiting a florist and social enterprise in inner city Melbourne who are growing skills and relationships for women from refugee backgrounds. And what they're doing is beautiful.
Are you planning on overhauling your garden, maybe coming up with a new design or updating an existing one? Well, before you get stuck in, I want to show you how to do a simple site analysis to help you make the most of your space.
And the way plants adapt to survive can be surprising. I'll be taking a look at one that normally goes unnoticed but is absolutely remarkable.